So this next video I'm going to talk about the basics of helicopter mechanics. Like aircraft, or like any aircraft for that matter, all aircraft are susceptible to anti-air fire, and a lot of people seem to just kind of ignore this, especially newer players seem to ignore the fact that AA exists on the battlefield. So it's always encouraged to use recon to find enemy AA positions, or even when unfortunately you do lose an aircraft, take note of where enemy AA is or potentially might be. Now, as you get more experience with the game, you'll actually start to learn where enemies usually put their anti-air at, not only on just the maps in general, but just people are predictable. So you'll be able to figure that out as you go. But the important part with helicopters is understanding each of the roles they have. So a lot of them have, there's a lot of recon types of helicopters, which are great for picturing or trying to figure out where the enemy is at, obviously. These are really good to put over forests and flanks, not really good on the front line, uh, like this guy is right here. The reason for this is due to the heavy amounts of anti-air that's out in these regions, but on flanks, recon helicopters are great because not only do they spot enemy helicopters that might be transporting recon-based infantry that are going to try to sneak behind your lines to find out where your CV or your FOB might be to send some artillery that way, but they can also spot enemy aircraft, jets, that are coming in that could do quick sneak bombing runs on your maybe your artillery that keeps firing in you know the same spot. And one of the cool ways to protect against that are using anti-air based helicopters like the DAP. These are more so better used to fight like enemy helicopters. For the most part, you shouldn't really have to worry about enemy jets coming around here because usually you'll see them coming and you can send an interceptor to take them out. But when it comes to the case of helicopters, they're much smaller and jets don't see them very well, especially at larger distances. And recon usually won't see it, even over here. If you have recon hiding in these forests over here and watching this area, it's still hard to even see the helicopters, even if it has exceptional recon. So, having a helicopter guarding your flank, like over here or over here, with maybe a DAP protecting it, or if the recon helicopter has a machine gun like this minigun, you can use these helicopters to knock out incoming enemy helicopters that would otherwise try to flank you. As for down in the middle, there's different types of helicopters used for frontline engagements. If you know the enemy isn't going to be able to hit you with anti-air, let's say you're pretty far behind, like let's say the enemy anti-air is over here, and you're just supporting some infantry attacking this village here. Pull this helicopter out of the way. These UH-1C Heavy Hogs have missiles on them, designed to help support infantry by firing on position or just directly targeting enemy forces by right-clicking on them. And basically they just fire their grenade launchers and the rockets, while avoiding enemy anti-air over here. These are great for supporting infantry attacks and other frontline engagements that are much further away from the enemy. Another type of helicopter are ATGM-based helicopters. These are great for anti-tank purposes, obviously, because that's what they're literally for. But you got to keep in mind that these helicopters, just like normal ATGMs, are still limited by sight ranges based off of what's in front of them. For example, this Seahawk, if it were sitting right over here, it couldn't shoot a tank that's hiding right over here because of the forest in the way. So even though it has a height advantage, being able to sit on top of forest like this right here and being able to pick off, see if it moves right about here, a tank that's coming up this road here, the ATGMs on this thing would fire and knock the tank out. But you still have to be aware that enemy anti-air is still present in this region. So sometimes it isn't always the best to have a helicopter sitting on the front lines even like this, but that's usually what they're for. A more better use of this type of helicopter, this one specifically being if you look at its stats, it's meant for heavier tanks. If you want a multi-role kind of helicopter, you can have those as well. The Vulcans and the Hydras are great against picking off infantry and lighter vehicles, whereas these TOWs are great at taking off medium to heavy tanks, usually more so medium or lighter vehicles. These are great for strafing just past the front line, or on your side of the front line, the back sides of your lines, I guess, and just kind of strafing, watching the enemy front line, seeing if you can pick off a vehicle or two, maybe like a 60-point tank, 80-point tank, something like that. That's kind of what these guys are meant for. The important part to remember with helicopters is that they're really easy to get shot down. And one of the cool ways you can actually prevent that from happening if they're just sitting around is they have this ability to change altitude, just like helicopters in real life. You can change the altitude to get them to come above tree lines like this, to quickly pop up, hit a target, and then change the altitude again to drop them back below. Now, gunships are the only types of helicopters in the game. There's also transport helicopters as well. Infantry can be loaded into them, and there are various different types of them, and each of them have their own speeds. So it's important to pay attention to kind of helicopters you want to use to bring out on the field. Do you want helicopters to get infantry there fast, but you don't want to spend a whole lot of points, and the area is already secured, and you just want to reinforce it? Then maybe putting some infantry and UH-1H Hueys might actually be the best thing you can do. If you need to quickly take a position, let's say you're rushing at the beginning of the match to, say, take the hill up here, well, using the Black Hawk, because it's a much faster helicopter, might be a more viable option. Or better yet, if it's late game and you're worried about losing it, and the only way you can think of as breaking the tie is doing a quick flank with some helicopters around the side of the map, landing in maybe here because the enemy controls this position, and then do an attack from the rear without them ever even noticing. If the player isn't smart, they won't see it coming because they didn't put recon over here. But if you can do that kind of a maneuver, you can actually save yourself a lot of time and potentially win yourself the match, or even knock out a CV or two because you're able to flank around using faster helicopters. One of the nice things about a faster helicopter is not only is it able to get there faster, obviously, but it has the least likelihood of being detected due to the fact that it's moving faster, and if recon happens to be passing by and just kind of goes back inward, if it's trying to flank, do its own little flank thing or whatever it's trying to do, the helicopter moving fast might not actually be seen because it might have, well, it might not be able to get into the sight range of the recon, but most importantly, it's just because of how fast it's moving. By the time, even if it does get caught, hopefully it'll be too late and the helicopter is able to land and drop off its troops. The last and final type of helicopter are logistics helicopters. These are highly situational, and personally, I don't really use them. Um, on this map specifically, there are some uses for them, but that's something for another video. But these helicopters can be great for resupplying troops that are stuck behind enemy lines, such as being encircled, or for perhaps you have troops that have managed to flank right around here and really need to resupply because they're out of rockets because the enemy has been fighting you for so long and you're just running out of ammunition. These helicopters don't carry as much as their ground-based logistics units, but are just as effective and oftentimes are usually the safer thing to send all the way around the map to get to, rather than sending a ground-based CV right up the middle where it'll get either captured or destroyed. So that's pretty much it for helicopters. Very basic overview of them. I'll do some more advanced tactics and how to work them into actual combat later on, but for the most part, just getting used to how the helicopters work and the various different types is pretty much all you really need to know.